Starting off today with conversions. Let's just quickly run through that one more time. So when you're going from right to left, from the smallest unit to the largest unit, from millimeters to kilometers, remember 1000 millimeters is 1 meter. You can memorize that if you want. 10 millimeters on your ruler is 1 centimeter. 100 centimeters is 1 meter. 1000 meters is a kilometer. If you've got millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers, that's in order of size, right? So millimeter being the lowest, centimeter, meter, then kilometer. So if I got left to right, I'm going to divide going that way, and I'm going to multiply if I'm going to reduce it from kilometers down to millimeters in the opposite direction. So what do we divide and what do we multiply by? Let's have a look at that. So if I want to go from millimeters to centimeters, use millimeters over here, there's centimeters, what do we do? Divide by 10. If I want to go from centimeters to meters, use it over here, divide by 100. If I want to go from meters to kilometers, divide by 1000, right? For 1 kilometer. So if I'm going backwards, I'm going to multiply by 1000. I'm going to multiply by 100. I'm going to multiply by 10, going backwards. So remember, when you want to convert this, so for example, if you look at a simple example, let's suppose I got 267 meters, and I convert this into kilometers, and I also convert it into centimeters, and I also convert it into millimeters, let's say, in each case. Right? So if I use this table carefully, there's meters over there. And if I want to get to kilometers, I got to divide by 1000. So I divide by 1000, and I get 0.267. If I want to convert it into centimeters, then I can go from meters to centimeters, which means I'm going to take this part and multiply it by 100. I multiply it by 100 to get 26,700 centimeters. And if I want to go from meters to millimeters, then I got to multiply by 100 and multiply by 10 as well. So here I'm going to multiply by 100 and multiply by 10. So I have to multiply by 1000. And it comes to 267,123 millimeters. Okay. All right. The same thing applies for kilograms. Let's just quickly run through kilograms and grams and milligrams. So if I've got milligrams and I've got grams, then I've got kilograms, then we have something that's known as a ton, right? Tons. Milli always has something to do with 1000. So 1000 of that is one of those. So to go there, you have to divide by 1000. And to go from grams to kilograms, you also have to divide by 1000. Now you can get centigrams, but they don't use that often. You can't get it. And if I want to go from kilograms to tons, I also divide by 1000 in this case. So going backwards now, I would multiply by 1000, multiply by 1000, and multiply by 1000. In a simple example, if I have 2,478 grams, and I want to convert this into milligrams, kilograms, and tons, what would I do for each of these? So 2,478 grams going into milligrams means you're going backwards, right? So you're going to multiply this one by 8,000. That'll be 2,478, and then just add 3 zeros after. And then going from grams to kilograms, divide by 1,000, right? So that'll become 2.478. If I want to go from grams all the way to tons, I got to divide by a million. So it's going to be a bit of a decimal. 1, 2, 3. 0.00247 feet, like that. Starting at that and then converting it backwards using this conversion chart over here. Let's move on to liters now, milliliters, liters, and then kiloliters, which is your general. You also get centiliters. So if I go from milliliters, again, 1,000, what am I going to do going right? Divide. What am I going to do going left? Multiply. And so if I have 24.9 liters, and I want to convert it into kiloliters, I know that I have to divide by 1,000. So that becomes 0.0249. And if I want to go from liters to milliliters, I have to multiply by 1,000. Oh, 0 point. So remember this here, we're going from liters to milliliters, so we have to go times 1,000. So all we got to do is take 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, move the decimal 3 spaces to the right, and end up with that. And you can see kiloliters is in decimals, milliliters is much more. That brings us, let's bring it all together. Let's see what we can do if I bring it all together. I've got millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Then I've got milligrams, grams will be over here, kilograms in line with that, and then tons over here. And milliliters, liters is over here, and kiloliters is over here. And you'll find there's missing gaps where we don't really use those. But yeah, you can get centigrams in there. So if I'm going to go from, let's say we put those important ones out there. So those look the same across the board. That will be I'm going to put the times and divide, right? Times, divide, 1,000. Times, divide, 1,000. And that's the same for this one. What you notice about milligrams, millimeters, milliliters, kilometers, kilograms, kiloliters, they all have some kind of 1,000 multiplied or divided. And let's just remember that when we're going right, we divide. When we're going left, we multiply. So we know which one is which. And then in between, we can then go again here, times and divide by 1,000. Here we could break those up into stages. Times, divide by 10. Times, divide by, so it's 100 over there, all the way to the right. All right. I'll give you a second to maybe write that down, and then we'll try a few examples. Just don't forget the calculation for this one here. So you've got milliseconds, seconds, and minutes, hours, and days. Multiply, divide by 1,000, multiply, divide by 60 twice, and then multiply, divide by 24, then multiply, divide by 7. And then going to years, multiply, divide by 52, months, multiply, divide by 12, right? So in chronological order. A quick recap on this side here, we've got multiply and divide by 1,000. In between millis and original units, these are the original units, meters, grams, and liters. And the central units then go milli, 1,000 this way, kilo, 1,000 to the right, every single time. Milliliters, we did a conversion there, so quickly just running through where we started off. Okay. All right, so I want you to try these few questions now. Question 1. Okay, so you're going to convert from the left-hand side of this table to the right-hand side of this table. Okay. Let's put the table in here. And let's just go a few lines. I want you to type your answer in. You can send your answer directly to me. Alright. Okay. So question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, and question 5. I want you to convert from meters to millimeters. I want you to convert from kiloliters to liters. And I want you to convert from grams to tons. And then moving on to a little bit of time. So I want to get some hours into seconds and minutes into milliseconds. Right, MS for milliseconds. All right, let's start with meters. Suppose I've got 3.5. I've got 75.6 kiloliters. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 80 grams into tons. And hours, you've got to use a calculator for these ones. So calculator for question 4 and calculator for question 5 maybe. If I've got 3 hours, how many seconds maybe? And if I've got 2 minutes, how many milliseconds? Type your answers in, or let me know when you're done. Type it in when you're done. Give it a try. Alright, so let's look at meters and millimeters. Remember that millimeters is over here. And meters was over here, and kilometers was over here. So if I want to go right, remember I've got to divide. If I want to go left, I've got to multiply. So if I'm going to go from millimeters, from meters to millimeters, I'm going to go left, so I'm going to multiply. And I'm going to multiply by 1,000. So 3, 5, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. 1 over the 5 and 2 zeros, 3,500 millimeters. Alright, the next one, looking at kiloliters, would be over here. Liters would be in here. So this is how I would do this, like very quickly, because I can just sketch the main units. And if I'm going from kiloliters to liters, I'm going left. So left would be multiplied again by 1,000. So 1, 2, 3, 7, 5, 6, 0, 0. And then if I want to go from grams into tons, so remember grams also has milli component and it has kilo component, but then it has tons, which is over there. So grams to tons is going to go right. So I'm going to divide by 1,000 twice. I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that gets me 10 tons. 3 hours, 2 seconds. Remember we had milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours, and that's all we need for this. So I'm just going to leave those up there. And if we recap this, just quickly remember between these two it was 1,000, between those two was 60, and between those two was 60. So if I'm going to go from hours to seconds, I'm going backwards, left. I'm going to multiply by 60 twice. I'm going to multiply by 60 twice, and that's going to come to 3 times 60 times 60. I'm just going to grab a calculator. 60 times 3 times 60 will come to 10,800 seconds. Okay. And then minutes to milliseconds. Minutes to milliseconds, which means you have to go backwards again. In this case here, I'm going to multiply by 60, but then I'm also going to multiply by 1,000. So it's a bit of a trickier one. 2 times 60 times 1,000 will come to 120,000 milliseconds. 120,000 milliseconds. Some brilliant answers there that came through. If you sent it through, that would be those conversions over there. Okay, we're now going to look at the concept of squaring numbers. So let's look at the next part of the we're converting, but we now looking at specifically, for example, millimeters squared, centimeters squared, meters squared. For example, let's look at these conversions. You could call this area conversions. And the area conversions is basically developed around the concept of, let's take a square, for example. Okay. So if I take a square and I just rewrite the exact same square, let's say, 3 times. And over here, let's suppose I've got, I don't know, let's go with 1,000, or let's make it 100 millimeters by, let's make it 1,000. 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. It's the equivalent in centimeters. We know there's 10 millimeters is the equivalent of 1 centimeter. So if you've got 1,000 of these, you're multiplying by 100. You multiply that by 100, then you get to 100 centimeters by 100 centimeters. Okay? And if you're going to go to meters, we know that if you want to convert from millimeters to meters, just divide by 1,000. So that's 1 meter by 1 meter. And if I want to calculate the area for each of these, I just have to multiply length times breadth. So this area will come to 1,000,000 millimeters squared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one here would come to 10,000. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 10, 2, 3, 4, 10,000 centimeters squared. And it's the same thing, so they're equivalent. And this is 1 meter squared. So let me just write that in a more neater form. We basically have 1 meter squared from here is equal to 10,000 centimeters squared, which is equal to 1,000,000 millimeters squared. Now we have to go back to the concept of meters and centimeters, and let's see how this was related to each other. We did put it the other way around. Okay, so we had it the other way around. If I had millimeters over here, centimeters over here, and meters over here, we know that that was a plus minus 10. I mean, multiply by or divide by 10. Not plus minus. Multiply or divide by 10. Going either way, right? And then, depending on which one, don't forget, left is multiply or divide. Left is multiply, right is divide. Okay. Centimeters to meters, we said is 100. Multiply, divide by 100. So what we want to do is we want to try and maybe relate this back to that somehow. And if I take 100 and I square it, it will become 4 zeros. So if I want to go from centimeters to meters, you can see that's going to be plus minus 4 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4 as a conversion. So I take that and I square it. And if I want to go from centimeters to millimeters squared, I also square this, which is 100. Right? So that's plus, not plus minus, multiply, divide by 100. Right? Multiply, divide by 100. And 10,000. So technically, I could keep my previous conversion chart. So let's go straight to the first one. I could keep my initial conversion chart over here and simply just square it and then put a square there, and everything else will be the same. So if I want to convert into squared, I simply put a squared over there and everything else stays the same. Let's look at an example. Let's suppose I've got, let's make this go randomly, 2,450 um, millimeters squared, and I want to convert it into centimeters squared. Well, let's choose a number that's actually perfect square, something that's more reasonable. I'm going to grab a calculator quickly. So let's suppose I got 25 times 25, which is 625. Got a square. The square is 25 centimeters by 25 centimeters. So the area is 625 centimeters squared. All right, so let's suppose I've got a random question over there, and I want to convert it into millimeters squared. I want to convert it into millimeters squared. The first thing I look at is my millimeters and my centimeters, and I know between the two of them, it's multiply divided by 10. So if it's millimeters squared and centimeters squared, then it's multiply divided by 100, because it's squared. 10 is squared, right? Which means I would have to go backwards. In other words, if I have to redraw the millimeter component of the earth, 25 centimeters, remember, is 250 millimeters. This is 250 millimeters, which means this will be 62500 millimeters squared. So, in other words, going backwards, multiply by 100 millimeters squared. All right, quick conversion chart. I will draw it up now. So, I'm going to stick with millimeters squared, centimeters squared, meters squared, and kilometers squared, and using this and adapting it to all the other conversions, keeping it all intact as well. Remember to go between these two, multiply, divide, multiply, divide, multiply, divide. This one is 10, 100, 10 squared, 100 squared, 1000 squared. And that's the conversion chart. I'm going to leave that up there. And don't forget, if you're going towards the right, you divide. If you're going left, you're going to multiply by those numbers. Try these now. Suppose I've got 21 million millimeters squared, and I want to convert it into meters squared. Try that one. And the next one, I've got 15 kilometers squared, and I want to convert it into centimeters squared. Okay, go for it. Press pause and then continue. Millimeters squared, millimeters squared, meters squared. That's what we got. So remember to go there. I'm actually multiplying by and dividing by 100, and this one is actually 10,000. So I'm going to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. That's 21 meters squared. All right. So what have I actually done? To go from there to there, I have gone right. Right. So I'm going right. So I divide. I divide by 10 squared. And I also divide by 100 squared. So divide by 10 squared, divide by 100 squared. And so it ends up at 21, because I'm actually dividing by 100 and dividing it by 10,000. And if I count this properly, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. So if the comma is here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. Hope that makes a bit more sense. Now, let's go to kilometers squared now, to centimeters squared, going in the multiplication direction. So to go there, remember we're going to multiply by 1,000 squared. What's 1,000 squared? A million. And we're going to go one more multiplied by 10,000. So this number is going to be huge. It's going to be 15 with that many zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 zeros. And that's the conversion for that. All right. Cool. So that's part of conversions and pretty tricky if you don't understand the chart, right? But the chart does make it a little bit more easier to understand as well. Just remember it's like a normal chart, which is simply squaring the movement from one unit to the next. Okay? Normal chart, just squaring that. I'm going to send through an activity now on some conversions. And let's see if you can get these correct.